Hello, everybody. It's Paul Neeson with the Raw Life Health Show, and thank you for joining us. We have a guest today on the show, Michel Haley, and Michael's going to be one of the guests at our upcoming Raw Food Retreat. Michael, say hello here to the Raw Life audience.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Paul. And you just mentioned the Raw Retreat, and you got quite a lineup. I'm looking forward to you telling us more about who's going to be there. Hopefully you'll cover that on this event, too.
Yes, I will. And Michael, you've been one of our featured guests at our previous retreats, and you always have some great information. Two topics specifically you like to talk about a lot at the retreats. I know you have many other things on your website that you talk about, but one of the topics is the A1 aloe, and we're going to be stocked in aloe. So I want to talk about that today. The other thing you also talk about is digestion, and they seem to go hand in hand and go together. So for those of my audience that haven't seen you yet, why don't you give people an introduction to who you are and why you talk about aloe and digestion?
Well, I'm Michel Haley, and I'm a chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic, but I've always had this interest in nutrition. And I've kind of went through this progression of learning more and more, and I thought I had it all, 10 years ago, and I realized, oh, wait, there's more to it, and I'm still in this learning process. My understanding has evolved, and things have continued to change. The food supply is continuing to change, so we have to kind of grow and learn with it. One of the things that I've noticed is as the food supply is changing, our digestion and our gut health is also changing, and it's having an impact on our overall health. Let me give you just a couple examples. 50 years ago, the food didn't have near as many chemicals as it does now. All of us have this gut flora that's, our biome is a new buzzword in health and nutrition. It's this flora, this balance that's so important for our immune system, so important for digestion, and affects the way our mind works because it kind of determines the chemistry that occurs in our blood from the foods that we eat. It really impacts our health. As the food supply has changed and we start putting chemicals into our bodies in the food supply, it's actually killing these microbes. It's causing an imbalance in the gut flora and affecting the way our body works. Well, a handful of years ago, I happened to have acquired this Aloe Vera company. I went from being a customer, a very happy customer, to somehow managing the product line and bringing it into our company. The number one thing that people use aloe vera for is for gut health. I was already interested in gut health. It was a perfect marriage, and it just happens to be one of those things that ties in with everything that we're teaching these days for people getting healthy through the food choices. And there's more than just the food, but the choices that they make for a healthy bacterial flora in their gut, healthy digestion, healthy way their body works.
Okay, well, Mike, when you talk about this and you talk about the aloe and the digestive, why did you start taking the aloe to begin with? Did you have digestive problems before you got into this? Before you even went to chiropractic school? Like, what's your health story so people could know a little bit more about that?
Well, let me start with my introduction to aloe vera first, which was actually my hands. And it actually happened on a sailing trip where I didn't know much about sailing. And I, probably going back maybe 10 years ago, I was on a boat and I was, we were in a race, and I pulled up the sail and I looked at the captain like, what do I do next? And I could tell by the look on his face that what was supposed to happen next was already too late, and that was locking it down. Well, I didn't lock down the rope. I tried to hold on to it as the wind filled up the sail, and it started ripping through my hands, and I could feel my skin tighten up as they heated up and actually began to melt. Blistered, bloody, chiropractor, depending on his hands, suddenly unable to use his hands because they're blistered and bloody. Well, one of my patients, Rodney Stockton, said, put the aloe cream on them. So I started lathering him in this aloe cream, and I remember specifically showing my wife just 3 days later. I said, look at my hands. They look better now than they did before this burn. And I was truly amazed as I looked at them, realizing how much they had healed in such a short period of time, and my skin just looked brand new. It was a very strange thing. Well, at that time, Rodney said you should drink it too. I didn't really know why, and we thought, well, what could it hurt? I see what it did for my hands. You see, the skin and the gut are really very similar tissue. They're epithelial tissue, which absorbs and excretes, absorbs nutrients, excretes waste. That's why doctors can give you drug patches, or you can put aromatherapy on your skin and absorb it into your bloodstream. They work the same way. So if the skin can do better with aloe vera, it makes sense that the gut can as well. So we started drinking it. Now, when I had taken over this product line and started the company Stockton Aloe #1 to replace the former Aloe One Laboratories, we saw customers drinking this and started asking them, what has it done for them? The testimonials that we heard back was too good to be true. I had to start looking up old customers. You wrote this testimonial. Is it true? Is it true that you had cancer? Yes, I had cancer, and you're doing fine now. Wow, 20, 30 years later, I started verifying the testimonials, not only for the immune disorders, like people that had HIV or viral hepatitis, the cancers, but obviously the gut conditions, everywhere from acid reflux to Crohn's disease, and bloody Crohn's. People would actually have Crohn's to the point of having bloody bowel movements for going on for months. They would drink the aloe, and their story would go something like this. At first, I didn't think it was doing anything, but after just 3 days, there was a dramatic improvement, and I've felt great since. So we started hearing those kinds of stories, and I just realized this food does an incredible healing, not only on the skin, but also inside the body, working from the inside out. So that was my kind of introduction to years ago, and then just only a handful of years ago, 5 years ago, actually taking over the product line, going from customer to company owner, product line owner.
And I'm sure you have just amazing testimonials, just like the previous owner has, because I've used it and I just know this is the best. There's so many different aloe products out there on the market today, and without getting you in trouble talking about how bad other ones are, explain some of the differences and why Stockton A1 Aloe is so different than what else is out there.
Okay, I'm going to start by using a bad analogy. Okay, this analogy used to work for me, but like I told you, my nutrition understanding has evolved. I used to tell people that when there was something that was bad, in some cases it's actually still kind of good. For instance, if you liked pizza, and this is where it becomes a bad analogy because I really don't eat much gluten anymore, or I don't eat pizza anymore. But when I used to, I enjoyed pizza, and even if I ate a bad pizza, it was still pretty good. Even the bad aloes still seem to do pretty good. People still get decent results. But there's a problem with our foods. Let me pick one thing out that you'll find in other products that you won't find in ours. And I have to start with this key question. Foods that you purchase that are shelf stable, they've been pasteurized, but they've also been preserved. The key question is, what is the purpose of a preservative? Now just pause for a second. You don't need to answer this. Think about it though. What is the purpose of a preservative? Now, most people think the purpose is to improve the shelf life. That's actually the effect of a preservative. See, when we are figuring out how many, and my company doesn't do this, I'll say when food manufacturers are figuring out how much preservative to add to a food, they actually look at its killing potential. You see, the purpose of a preservative is to kill. So what they do is they start out with a substance that might have a known bacterial count. They add preservative, and they figure out what the log reduction is. How much bacteria can this preservative kill? How long can it remain bacteria-free? And they, put it through a series of tests, and they warm it up and try to simulate extended shelf periods of time to give it an approximate shelf life or an expiration date. So they put preservatives in the food, and the purpose of the preservative is to kill. Now, the question is, when you consume these foods that have chemical preservatives in them, and you put them into your body, do they suddenly know to stop killing bacteria? Obviously, that would be ridiculous. They don't know the difference between, gut flora and something that might be invading the product, the juice product, or whatever it might be when it's in the bottle. So as we're consuming these foods that have preservatives in them, they obviously can have an impact on our gut flora. Now, the manufacturers will say, well, it's only 0.25% or whatever the case is. Well, what if it was 1%? What if it was 10%? Would you consume it if it was 10%? If it was just a little, well, it's just a little poisonous, a
I have a
little
question.
toxic.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if the preservatives are killing what it is, wouldn't they be killing everything in it as well, all the nutrients as well? Other than, I mean, they're doing this to kill the bad stuff, I would guess, but they're killing the bad stuff, the good stuff as well, right?
Well, yeah, think of, one of the reasons that you want to consume lots of raw foods in your diet is because not only are you getting the life in the form of the bacteria and stuff like that, but you're actually, because, plants have naturally occurring bacteria, but you're also getting live enzymes. Now, I've heard that the enzymes are pretty much going to be dead after just a few days. If that's true, and we're preserving something and putting it on a shelf for months, what's happened to the enzymes in the, fruit juices? Obviously, they're damaged. They're changed. The nutrients, when you take the life out of, when you remove it from the vine, and that fruit, that vegetable, no longer has its life source attached to it, the nutrition begins to degrade and change. It is definitely not the same. So, we do our best. Obviously, the best you could do is right from the ground, right from the vine, right from the plant, the bush, whatever you're consuming. I think the next best thing is actually frozen. That is what we choose to do. Even in the case of vegetables, if you don't have your own garden, I actually think frozen fruits and vegetables are probably better in most cases than what you're going to find in a produce section. The
Well,
reason
I got a question about the frozen. Continue what you were saying because I've been meaning to contact you about that. But why is frozen the next best thing?
Yeah, well, when this is the way we do it. When we harvest our aloe leaves, we actually pull them from the fields. They're hand filleted. They're run through a grinder. But actually, they run through a heat transfer unit, which takes about 40 degrees of the heat out, getting them nearer to freezing. Then they go into the containers, which go into a freezer. So they're actually frozen in the same day that they were removed from the field. So with that kind of turnover, you're kind of stopping the change of that fruit or vegetable or whatever the case is that you might be purchasing frozen. You're stopping it in its path. So lots of most when you buy frozen fruits and vegetables, they're actually removed from those fields the same day, brought to the farm, to the warehouse where they're processed and frozen. When you purchase a fruit or vegetable from the produce section, it's interesting. There's a popular organic market that has this sign, and it says something like, we use waxes as to improve the appearance. What that means is to preserve it so you don't see the degradation over time. We use waxes. That's what that's the real interpretation there. They're trying to preserve it. I did a little study using aloe leaves to figure out how long it took for an aloe leaf to make it from the farm to the produce section. And I guess we could do this with any fruit or vegetable, but my expertise is aloe. I harvested one leaf per week, labeled them, and then watched the grocery store for the new aloe leaves to arrive. When a new batch arrived, I bought the best one I could find out of the bunch, brought it home, and I matched them up against mine to see where it fit in on the degradation scale. How much change has happened to this leaf before it made it to the grocery store? How much browning is there on the leaf? And I was able to place it somewhere around 1 month. It was right, based on what I had seen, it was at least 1 month removed from the field before it showed up at the grocery store across the street from me. Now, I would imagine, aloe is one of those things where it doesn't turn over like, say, oranges or peppers or whatever the case. I would imagine that those things are turning over faster than aloe leaves, so it might not be such a duration. But the path from the farm to the produce section is a great distance with many steps from, from the farm, to trucks to, distribution centers, to other distribution centers, out to the individual stores, where they're unloaded and then eventually placed in the produce section. Sometimes there's other countries involved. Sometimes it's, putting them on taking them from the farm boat to the shipyard, and then they load it on a ship, and then they float it over the sea to get it to us. And there's lots of steps to getting those things to your kitchen table. So I would say in many cases, frozen is, the shortest distance, because you're stopping it in its tracks. You're stopping that degradation by freezing it.
Yeah, now there's different types of frozen, and my friend owns a company in New York where they use frozen coconut water from Thailand.
Mhm.
And his company is the only one that just freezes it. But there's a new thing, or it's not new, but a thing that a lot of other companies are using. It's called high pressure pasteurization. And from what he determined is you're killing a lot of the enzymes and a lot of the nutrients when used at high pressure pasteurization, when you freeze it that way. So he chooses not to do that, but a lot of the other companies are. Well, believe it or not, the government has now come down and said he can no longer just freeze it. He has to use this high pressure, and I don't think it's a good thing. So he's going to go out of business pretty much because he doesn't want to deceive the public. Because when we hear the word frozen, we automatically think frozen is just frozen and it's all the same. So do you know about this, and how does your company do it?
I'm very familiar with high pressure pasteurization, or high pressure processing, HPP. It's an interesting question. We do not use it. We do not do any kind of pasteurization. We do microbiology testing. If you were to purchase a salad from the produce section and send it off to a lab, there's going to be bacteria counts on them. And they're going to be certain kinds of bacteria, and they should be non-pathogenic, unless animals pooped on the plants or something like that. They should be non-pathogenic, naturally occurring bacteria, to where if you put them in a jar and squeeze the juices and stuff, they might sour and make like a sauerkraut or a fermented, kimchi, or a cultured vegetable. It's a naturally occurring, healthy, beneficial bacteria that occurs naturally on the produce. Pasteurization is intended to kill those things. Instead of killing them, what we do is we fillet, grind, we take our juice and we freeze it, and then we actually will thaw portions of it at the lab and microbiology test it to see what the numbers are. So we have those numbers on every batch tested. We look for naturally occurring normal bacteria. We look for pathogenic bacteria. In the history of us owning the company, we've never found any pathogenic bacteria, but every batch is tested. I don't know about the history of the company before us. But we are comfortable, confident. We drink it normally, naturally every day. When we harvest it, I'm there at every step of the process with my cup, drinking, believe it or not, as much as a half gallon of aloe vera gel per day, because I want to taste test and make sure that we're, everything is going smooth and I'm getting exactly what I'm supposed to. So it's, we've never been concerned about it being harmful, but we still do the testing just to make sure. Now, we could high pressure pasteurize it, but if we do, not only are we killing the life, but we're potentially exploding the nutrients and potentially damaging enzymes and some of the finer things of the plant. It would be like radiation. We're not cooking it, we're not heating it, we're just putting a high energy beam through it that might split DNA, or it might make a change.
Now, why does the government have an issue with people just freezing it, and have they come down on you yet? And why are people, obviously real true health-minded people are hesitant to do this HPP process for obvious reasons, but why does the government have such a concern about not using it?
Yeah, I want to say it was the year 2002 where they really tightened down the rules and had the certain labels that you have to put on to use it. And there's also, there seems, if I recall, there's certain monetary levels of, your company, once it grows to this point, you can't go raw anymore, or there's, and there's different clauses. For instance, there is a farm to consumer rule. So in most cases, you can purchase raw right from the farmer or direct from the source. We are the source in our case, and our company has not grown to the size where not only that we don't really have their attention, we do. We've had our discussions with the FDA, but I do believe there's and I don't know the exact details, but there's like a dollar value that once you go over this, you're held to a different standard, and we aren't there yet. So that's kind of how we're getting by with it. We cannot sell it to a company like Whole Foods, where they would put it in their frozen food section, because it's not pasteurized. Now, You can be purchased at a, say, a commercial kitchen because they're in the food preparation business. If you go to the juice bar at Whole Foods, you will and order a raw juice, on the cup it will say, this product has not been pasteurized and might be dangerous for, the young, the elderly, and stuff like that. There's that, whatever that government warning is on it, and it's on our bottles as well. So it's just the FDA requirements, the laws. They're supposedly there for our benefit and our safety. Personally, when I see that label, I know that I'm getting something closer to nature, and it's a good thing, and I want to see that label on the things that I buy, because that's an indication to me that it hasn't been pasteurized and it hasn't been damaged. But to the FDA, it's one of those things that, well, if it was not harvested properly and possibly contaminated with pathogenic bacteria, this is our way of knowing that the pathogenic bacteria would have been killed off.
So basically, the same way the doctors commonly treat things like cancer, with this idea of, hey, we'll just do chemo and just kill everything, the good and the bad. The government somehow is doing this same idea to our food, thinking, hey, if there's something bad in there, we'll just kill everything, and pretty much killing all the nutrients along with killing any possible harmful bacteria. Correct?
Yeah, there was a time when microbiology was being understood for the first time, and the concept of pasteurization. And if you think of the, dairy farmer, because I think dairy is what made pasteurization popular. Imagine the old days when you were milking a cow into a tin bucket, and all of a sudden the cow, kicked up its leg or something and maybe splattered poop in the bucket, or whatever the case is, or maybe even stepped in the bucket, and the farmer takes the bucket and kind of swirls it around and dumps it out and starts over. Well, that's a contamination, because at the time they didn't understand microbiology to the extent we do now. Nowadays, the raw juice producers or raw dairy farmers understand this and go at it with a much cleaner, sanitary process to prevent the pathogenic bacteria from being, contaminating their products. So, distributing raw juices actually kind of holds you to a higher standard. That is, you have to make sure that it's going to be safe and not need pasteurization. So you can't allow any contamination. If I was required to pasteurize, I might be able to say, well, it really doesn't matter. My workers don't have to wear gloves and masks and hair nets and stuff like that when they're processing it, because it's all going to get filtered and cooked anyway. No, we don't filter, we don't heat, we don't do any of that. But if it was, I wouldn't have to worry. I wouldn't have to have the standards that I do where we process the aloe vera. So that's kind of the balance of things. Supposedly the law is there to protect us, and in some cases it probably does, because there's some companies that just want to make a buck, and they're going to take shortcuts in producing your food. And then there's others that are held to a much higher standard, and they're choosing not to pasteurize, not to add preservatives, and to do things really clean and pure and deliver the most close to the vine, fruit, vegetable as possible.
Sure. Mike, you're going to be at our retreat, and you're going to be speaking about this and many other great stories that you have. You're going to be giving a demonstration with an actual aloe leaf and how to grow it and how to use it the correct way. You're going to have samples of your product. It's going to be great. We're so glad to have you as a guest. For people that are interested in a retreat, we'll put a link on the screen. But Mike, give us your, I'm going to put a link here on the screen now as well to your YouTube channel. You guys could just go there to Mike's YouTube channel, and here's the link to the raw food retreat that's coming up next month that Mike will be a special guest at. But Mike, tell people your website, your main website, where they could order this aloe, and also maybe learn more about yourself.
Okay, great. Yeah, our website's aloe1, ALOE, the number 1.com. And we also have a shortcut link to the YouTube channel, which is aloe.guru, ALOE.GURU.
Wonderful. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy, but I just wanted to introduce everyone to you and let them know you'll be at the retreat. And anything else you want to say before we end?
I'm really looking forward to it. I heard you have a stellar lineup of people on the schedule for the retreat, some names that I'm very familiar with, some new people. If you want to mention them, great. I'm sure we can probably find the lineup on your website.
Absolutely. There's flyers everywhere, and people can go to the link again, and they can check it out. And under the video, there'll be a link as well.
Great. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks so
Great.
much, Paul.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.